Welcome to Tennis Talk Daily. I hope everyone is doing well, or in this case, I guess it's Tennis Talk Nightly. Welcome to Tennis Talk Nightly. We've had an eventful day at the U.S. Open. Greetings, everybody. Hi, Robert. Hi, Kultura. Hi, Sudarsan. And there have been some minor upsets. I wouldn't call them major upsets. Rafael Nadal will be playing later. Juan Martín del Potro will be playing later. I have the Serena Williams match in front of me, which is mildly interesting. They're just in their first game. But there's been some interesting upsets, minor upsets we can talk about, particularly on the women's side. Simona Halep was breaking records that she shouldn't be breaking, that no one wants to break. But she has broken them. We've also had a couple of instances of players on the men's side, I think, showing that they are in good form. I want to talk about the Stan Wawrinka match against Grigor Dimitrov. We had the one-handers on display. It was the battle of the one-handers in that match. And let me say, it was a fantastic match. It was a pleasure to watch the Stanimal in action, and he really just dominated this match, folks. There was a little change in the momentum of it when Stan began to have some problems with his knee, I believe. And at that point, Dimitrov, that was in the second set, Dimitrov was able to capitalize on that little problem, and the momentum did swing. But then Stan showed. He showed his true mettle. I have a lot of faith in Stan at this U.S. Open. He is a U.S. Open champion. We have a few U.S. Open champions in the draw, of course, but he is, I think, a one-time U.S. Open champion. He was in very solid form. I don't think anybody that knows anything about tennis would disagree with the proposition that Stan was in very good form. But what about the Americans? That's another topic I want to discuss in this hour of tennis talk that I really look forward to every day. Hi, Patrick. Nice to see you. Stan is back, says Robert, and I think, as you were alluding to last week, Aaron, Wawrinka is a very solid dark horse pick to win it all this year. He could do it. He's shown the capability, but let me say that those backhands, the couple of the down the line backhands from the Stanimal today were just devastating and mind-blowingly good. He has found form, and he, I believe, is in a position to possibly go very, very deep into this tournament. While we're talking about Stan, let's just look at what things look like for Stan. The match with Dimitrov, it was a straight set victory for Stan Wawrinka, who has that upward momentum. He's finally found his rhythm. We want to talk a little bit about Andy Murray today, who came through his first set match as well. But one thing that is certainly true, and you may be a Murray fan or you may not be a Murray fan, but one thing is certainly true. Murray has been able to find a respectable rhythm much quicker than either Djokovic did after his long time out, or certainly Wawrinka too. Djokovic and Wawrinka really had to struggle, didn't they? Really, I gain respect for these guys when they, have to work through these problems, and but they find their form and they rise back up to the top. It's so inspiring. I love to watch it. And Wawrinka, again, maybe we could call this part of the show Wawrinka in Ascendance. The Wawrinka ascendancy. But let's look at his draw going forward. It will be Gilles Simon in the next round for Stan. Their head-to-head is 4-3 in favor of Stan. And excuse me, I am taking that back. It will not be Gilles Simon. I'm reading this draw incorrectly. I'm not sure we know quite yet who Stan will be playing. Well, with the live and uncut Tennis Talk Nightly, there are mistakes made. I apologize for that. Let me just see. I'll figure it out here. But his main problem coming into the, I mean, he's going to be able to get through these early rounds, so it doesn't matter that much. But his main problem coming in to the round of 16 would be an Isner problem. But he might have to deal with Milos Raonic in the third round, which now I can promise you that I am reading the draw correctly now. So Stan versus Raonic could be a very interesting third round match. In fact, that's my new favorite third round match. Second favorite, because we know Federer will likely be facing Nick Kyrgios in the third round. Stan looked fantastic. He really looked fantastic. Patrick Nielsen says, Wawrinka is going to play a qualifier. You go Humbert. Thank you, in the second round. Yeah, and he beat Harris. Humbert must have beaten Harris. I was reading the lines wrong here, but I do know that that's probably not going to be a big problem with the qualifier. He's going to have a potential problem with Raonic, who came through his match today against Jared Donaldson, but not before dropping a set to Donaldson. Dusan Lajovic was able to send Damir Jumher packing and will face Cameron Norrie in the second round. Isner came through Bradley Klahn. Well, listen, one of the issues I wanted to discuss was the Americans. We're at the U.S. Open. A couple of you are Americans. A couple of you are from Europe and are international people, and I'm in no way a tennis patriot. I think I've shown that much. I am not jingoistic with respect to American tennis players. But I have said before that for many years, the Americans dominated professional tennis. I'm old enough to remember that. But there was a time of McEnroe, of Connors, and then, of course, the era of total domination by Pete Sampras. But then Andre Agassi was in there in the 90s too. Total American domination of tennis. Jim Courier, of course. Michael Chang was in there. But that all ended, didn't it? The rise of Federer signaled an end to the age of American dominance. And in that very telling match, and the year-end finals in 2003, I believe it was, just as Federer was making his first real breakthrough, he had won Wimbledon, but he couldn't quite figure out Agassi. He could figure out Sampras, as he showed in 2001, but he couldn't quite figure out Agassi. Well, at the end of the year in 2003, Federer took out Agassi, and that was the moment when American dominance ended and we entered into a more of an international era in terms of the players that dominate, certainly kind of European domination, we could probably call it. But that would it have to include a kind of large view of Europe to include Serbia even, right? So yes, it's been the age of European domination. Who is the great American hope at the U.S. Open this year? I ask you, who is the great American hope? Not Sam Querrey. Sam Querrey is among the carnage from today's U.S. Open in the first round. Querrey could not get through Andreas Seppi, and Seppi will go on to face Shapovalov, who was playing wonderfully. He's another one-hander who was playing today, Shapovalov, and it was a Canadian versus a Canadian with Shapo. And I'm going to try to get the name right. Of course, I know Auger Aliassime. Auger Aliassime. Félix Auger Aliassime. Well, Felix, let's just call him Felix. And that's not how to pronounce his first name, folks. We'll call him Felix. He was looking very promising today. He was up a break against Shapovalov in the first set. But I say to you this, Shapo showed some real fight today. He was able to turn that match around against Auger Aliassime, who is a very promising youngster. But ultimately, Felix, we'll call him Felix, had to retire. There was some kind of injury. There were tears shed at the end of the match, in fact. And since they were countrymen, there was kind of a touching moment at the end of the match. So I have some comments. I made the query, who is the great American hope? Who is the great American, not the great Canadian hope. Shapovalov is the great Canadian hope. And let me say, he has some beautiful dancing backhands. And he is a real promising player, if you ask me. I enjoyed watching Shapovalov today. He was up in the third set, and he was really just closing in on the win. Felix was in some real pain, apparently. So, but in general, Shapo looked to be in very, very solid form for you Shapovalov fans out there. But I think Isner is. I mean, listen, Isner's the one. Isner's the one. He's not he's not perfect, but he's the one. I mean, if you listen, for example, to like John McEnroe comment on a John Isner match. Have you ever watched John McEnroe or listened to John McEnroe comment on a John Isner match? McEnroe's kind of nationalistic in that regard. He knows, he lived through that. He was part of that era of American dominance. He was one of the dominators, essentially. And of course, 1984 was just an amazingly good year for McEnroe. He didn't have the longevity that we see in the players today in the Big Four. But he had some moments and time periods, fairly short time periods of true brilliance. True brilliance, a real artist on the court, McEnroe was. And so based on that, based on McEnroe's style of play, you would almost think that he wouldn't be a big fan of Isner. They don't exactly resemble each other in terms of their styles of play, but McEnroe loves Isner. He's got a little bromance going on, and he knows Isner very well. But I remember him commenting at Wimbledon just this year, and he just loves Isner, and wants Isner to do well. And actually, I mean, he believes that Isner will win Grand Slams. I think McEnroe is convinced of that, but he really likes Isner. I think, and this is not to say anything bad about John McEnroe. I love John McEnroe, but I do think it's kind of that it's a nationalistic thing. Again, he lived through the age of American dominance, McEnroe did, but he also witnessed with his own two eyes the end of American dominance and the rise of Federer and the age of Federer, and then, of course, the age of the big three. Murray's not quite an American. So, and of course, we were talking about Steve Johnson the other night. Who else? Who else is an American hope? You do have Taylor Fritz. It's another American. that has shown some promise. But I do believe that, Patrick, you're right. It's got to be Isner. It's got to be John McEnroe's little boy toy, Isner. And Isner, of course, has a very solid record behind him, particularly this year. Well, there's also Jack Sock. Now, why would I ever bring up the name Jack Sock in a conversation about a good American or a great American hope at the U.S. Open? Well, Sock today ended his 7-match losing streak. Jack Sock has not won since May, when he beat David Ferrer in Rome. Not since May in singles. But the interesting thing is that Jack Sock has had a very respectable doubles year. He's 26, let's see. He's won 26 matches, lost 10 matches in doubles. That's a pretty good record. And he's won 4 titles in doubles. Very good record. But Sock is through, and Sock, for some, there are some that believe that Sock is capable. I mean, that was one of the reasons that people were sort of disappointed in Sock. That was one of the reasons that people were talking about Sock when he was losing, because he has shown promise. He is a very solid player, and when he's on, he's on. And so we'll just have to see. But let's look at the Americans' way through with Isner. Isner will be facing Nicholas Jarry, who came through Goyocek today. I believe that was a 5-set match, if I have that correct. And will face in the 3rd round either Cameron Norrie or Dusan Lajovic. Dusan Lajovic is a tough customer, I believe. I like Dusan Lajovic a lot. He brings a very nice one-hander as well. He's a good player. I think Lajovic has a future, to be honest. Mark my words on that. I think he's got some titles in his future, some pretty big titles, maybe even 1,000-level titles. But back to Isner's run. And then, of course, so he has a clean run into the round of 16. And this is sort of, thank you very much, Robert. Robert, thank you for your viewership. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your great comments. Thank you for sticking with me. I was going to say through thick and thin, but it hasn't been that dramatic. It's been a lot of fun the whole time. Robert Ferguson is a very intelligent guy that's been watching the show for a while and has contributed a lot of great comments. So I appreciate all your comments, and I learn from you guys in a very real way. You know, I sit up here. I guess I'm supposed to be the expert. That's not how I think about it. I know some things about tennis. I've done some public speaking, so I can get up here and kind of talk for a little while about tennis. But the real intelligence in this channel, the best stuff, the essence of what comes from this channel in terms of insight really does largely stem from how intelligent you guys are in your comments and in our interaction. So thank you. And thank you, Robert Ferguson, in particular. But Isner will then, in the 4th round, have to possibly deal with Wawrinka. So that could be an out. That's assuming that Wawrinka gets past Raonic. That'll be a test of Stan's mettle too. I'm looking for evidence, because Stan could surprise us this year. He really could. He feels good. For those of you interested in the speed of the courts, I don't know if you guys have been thinking about this, and let me know what you think about these comments that I'll make. But what they look like is exactly what I said before. They look faster than Indian Wells. They look a little slower than Cincy. And they look, to be honest, they look about the same as last year. And of course, in this new homogenized world of professional tennis, homogenized in terms of style of play on the one hand, also homogenized in terms of the court speeds and the court composition. It's all kind of been, well, I think as I put it in a video, it's all kind of, the hard courts have been clayified, which was a word that I came up with. And that's because it's sort of true. They've kind of put sand and dirt on the hard courts. And that makes them rougher and it makes them resemble the clay surface a bit more. But Patrick says the courts seem very fast. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the courts. I mean, my impression based on watching the matches is that they're playing just about as fast as they were last year. But again, we're in a homogenized world of slow courts. The US Open is, I think, notoriously slow, but not as notoriously slow as Indian Wells. So if we get that round of 16 match between Isner and Wawrinka, well, that will be quite a showdown, my friends. Quite a showdown. I do believe Isner is a great hope. You do have that Miami 1000 level title. He performed solidly at Wimbledon. Isner will, and as soon as John McEnroe comes on board, at some point John McEnroe is going to start commenting or commentating, as the commentators put it. And as soon as John McEnroe starts commentating, well, Isner's going to have a cheerleader. He'll probably get in on that. But if Isner can get through Wawrinka, or it may be Raonic if Wawrinka can't deal with Raonic. Raonic looks very strong, folks. Raonic looks very strong. He has been finding very, very solid form, dictating play from what I've seen, particularly in Cincy, but he seems to be extending this. He did drop a set today in his match against Jared Donaldson, as far as I know. I can check that. It's I've had to kind of break down these numbers and break down all these stats. A lot has happened. It's interesting in these tournaments. In the beginning, it's kind of slow. It's both. These tournaments both speed up and slow down. They slow down insofar as the matches become more sparse, basically, and then by the end of it, you're just seeing a couple of matches a day. So that really slows it down. It's a lot happening. But on the other hand, they really speed up because the stakes get higher. Sort of paradoxical. It's interesting. I love the experience of these tournaments, but now is always the time that I struggle to get my head around the entire draw. Well, we go by halves. For those of you wanting to understand the draw, today they basically went through the first round matches in the top half of the draw. And tomorrow they will go through the first round matches in the bottom half of the draw, which means we'll see Federer. But back to Isner. I don't want to get distracted. Serena Williams on serve, looking okay. Not with catsuit. The catsuit is not on. I don't think it is. If Isner can get through Raonic or Wawrinka, then he'll have a real problem on his hands in the person of probably Juan Martín del Potro. Now, Borna Coric is also coming through that quarter with Delpo as well as Tsitsipas. Now, I watched a bit of the Tsitsipas match, but I haven't seen the scores, so I want to check the scores with Tsitsipas. In fact, right now, he looked to be doing okay. Team's playing well as well. Team just took the first set in the grandstand court from Besic. And in terms of Tsitsipas, where are we? Do we have a... Tsitsipas looked to be taking charge in his match. He's playing Robrito. He's taken the first two sets, and now he is serving for the match. Bravo, Stefanos. Nick Kyrgios doesn't know what he's talking about. Tsitsipas will go on to face And this should be an interesting match. It looks like it's going to be Medvedev. Now, I don't think Medvedev is quite done with his opener yet. No, he is as well. He took out Evgeny Donskoy in straight sets. And Medvedev, for those of you who remember, is coming off his second title win, a 250 level tournament at Winston-Salem. So let's see what Medvedev does. Or Tsitsipas will face Medvedev in the second round. That will be the rematch of Miami. I think that's the last time they played, and they had a little run-in, a little conflict in Miami that we've talked about a few other times. Well, Kyle Edmund also fell today to Paolo Lorenzi, the Italian, who is no youngster. Lorenzi is, I believe, 37 years old. Maybe he's 36 years old. Been around for a long time. Highest ranking that he's had in his career. I think he turned pro 2003. He's right around the same generation as Federer. And his highest ranking was number 33, and I'm not sure when he achieved that ranking. But right now, I think he's in the 80s. I don't know the specific number. But, yeah, he took out Kyle Edmund. Kyle Edmund has been sort of struggling. There wasn't a retirement in that match. Any Murray fans out there? I was saying before that I think Murray has been executing this comeback certainly quicker than Djokovic or Wawrinka were able to. Now, Federer is a different story. Federer came back pretty quick, too, in 2017. It's interesting. It just kind of depends on the player. Some of these players take a long time to kind of re-find their form. For those of you just coming on, welcome to Tennis Talk Daily. We are covering the first round matches of the U.S. Open, which are actually happening as we speak. We have them live. I have the Serena Williams match on. I should change it over to the Dominique Thiem match. Thiem now is on the cusp of breaking his first round opponent, Basic. And so I'm glad that Thiem's looking strong. Steve Johnson, who we just saw and fell to Medvedev at Winston-Salem, looks to be coming into a win with Istomin. He's going to take the third set and the match here in just a minute, serving for it. And Tsitsipas does come through Robito. So the Tsitsipas-Medvedev will be another interesting match. Kevin Anderson right now is struggling with another American, Ryan Harrison. Did you watch that, Patrick? You watched the match by Tsitsipas? I'm glad. I mean, I looked at the numbers. They looked quite good. David McKelveny asks, Aaron, can you confirm or deny whether Andy Murray was in fact out of action because of a personality transplant? David, you're funny. Well, do you think that his personality has changed much? I'm not sure. Murray has an interesting personality. Listen, he's a fighter. He's a fighter. He's another one. He doesn't care what he looks like. He's kind of got hair similar to mine. You got the curly hair. Well, when you have hair like mine, you really can't brush it. It kind of does what it wants to do. And Andy Murray, I think, has the same problem. But I think I brush my hair even more than Andy Murray does. Constantly sort of got bedhead, doesn't he? But yes, Kevin Anderson, the big serving South African who did that final job on Federer at Wimbledon. That was the most infuriating match in the history of tennis, one of them. But Kevin Anderson struggling a bit with Ryan Harrison. He's down a set. Harrison has taken the second two sets. Kevin Anderson squeezed the first set in a tiebreak, 7-4. They are on serve in the fourth set. Ryan Harrison is a tough customer. He's a tough customer. Well, long matches in these early rounds sometimes doesn't bode very well for these players. Let's talk about Simona Halep for a second. I was watching the Sloane Stephens match, and on the women's side, there was a couple of good matches. Right now, Serena Williams is out there, but the big news about Simona Halep, of course, is that she basically set a record. There was no number one seed before Simona Halep today that had lost in the first round on the women's side of a Grand Slam. I think that is the record. She has the record, and she has lost in the first round of an enormous number of matches. I'm getting a little readout here of the handshake between Tsitsipas and Tommy Robito. And as always, it was a very cold handshake. Tsitsipas is kissing the court. He seems to be a very spiritual guy. He seems to have some kind of spiritual connection. I need to learn more about him. He seems like he has an interesting personality. But in any case, Kevin Anderson, yes, on serve, he could easily even this out and take it to 5. But again, a 5-set match in the first round doesn't bode well for the 5th seed Kevin Anderson at the U.S. Open. A finalist, mind you, from last year, as you will remember. Vlasic Pospisil was able to get through Lucas Lachko in straight sets. And Pospisil will go on to face, well, we don't quite know yet. We have to see who wins the match between Rafa Nadal and David Ferrer. Well, that will probably be Nadal. It's probably a safe money prediction, and Nadal will therefore face in the second round Pospisil. Now, Pospisil is a big guy, Canadian. A lot of Canadians playing today. Canadians do well. We got some great Canadian players. Chapeau's kind of leading the pack, but Pospisil's a bit older. Great server. He's had some good results on grass. I don't think he's had such deep runs at the U.S. Open in previous years, and it looks like it will be a second round run unless he pulls a major upset. Pospisil was in Nadal's quarter at Wimbledon, and I'm not sure if you remember. I did a show and talked about how it could be possible. Now, at that point, we hadn't seen Nadal on the Wimbledon lawns. In 2018, we hadn't really determined where he was in terms of his level of play. And it turned out, as I've said before, that Nadal was spectacular on the grass, at least relative to previous years. But ex ante, before I could really have much experience with Nadal's play, I was looking at the draw, and in the abstract, they said, well, Pospisil could be someone that upsets Nadal. I don't think Nadal had to play. Nadal didn't have to play Pospisil in the end. Pospisil lost in the opening round, or maybe it was the second round. So Nadal, of course, will be playing tonight. That will be a major attraction. Serena Williams, for those of you interested, is now up a break. No surprises. Up a break in the first set. I'm watching that. But let's get back to Halep, because Halep we're kind of bouncing around, I know, between the men's and the women's, but I wanted to talk about Halep because the big news there is that she's actually, she was in Serena's quarter, and so this really clears the path for Serena Williams into, say, the quarterfinals and even the semifinals. It makes things a bit easier for Serena Williams, quite a bit easier. Halep is a very solid player. Well, what happened to Halep? What happened to hollering Halep? Falls in straight sets. And really was just out of form, breaks the record. She was broken 5 times in the match. A no-name player. This is Halep's 12th. Now, she's had some great results this year, folks. She won the French Open. She was in the finals of the Australian Open. Nevertheless, talk about ups and downs. Listen to this. This was her 12th first-round loss in majors. 12th first-round loss in majors. It was a very sad day for Halep. Now, she doesn't have too much to complain about. She won the Rogers Cup, beat Sloane Stephens. She got to the final in Cincinnati before falling to Kiki Bertens, who was in this draw somewhere too. I haven't looked at all of the details with the women, but I'm wanting to make myself conversant about this. Break for Anderson. Very nice. Very nice. Yes, I'm interested in that. He seemed to be struggling for sure. It's going to take it to 5 sets, huh? Wow. Well, if anyone can win the U.S. Open playing 5 sets the whole time, playing major 5-set matches, well, I think we know that Kevin Anderson can do that. He's a marathon man. He is absolutely a marathon man. Yes, Kevin Anderson up a break, now serving, about to serve for the 4th set. And this one will go to 5 against Ryan Harrison, who is one hope for the Americans. Not the great hope. I guess Isner is the big hope, as we were saying before. But on the women's side, and I'm kind of bouncing back, why not? It's the 21st century. It's the 21st century. We can move back and forth between the men and the women quickly, seamlessly. Sloane Stephens, the defending champion. She dominated Rodina, who is no spring chicken, kind of an older player, a kind of stocky player. Stephens just dominates, and I love Sloane Stephens. I love her style of play. She can dictate the course of points better than pretty much all of the women, and she's not a grunter. She's a quiet worker. She puts together points in very interesting ways, but she dictates. That forehand of hers, very dependable. I mean, she just looked fantastic today against Rodina. Well, the match changed a bit. The course, the momentum of the match, these matches are narratives. They're stories in and of themselves, but the momentum changed a little bit for Sloane Stephens in that match. And Rodina started giving Stephens in the 2nd set a taste of her own medicine. A taste of her own medicine. She picked it up, started swinging through her ground strokes and dictating play herself a little more. But Stephens was able to keep that at bay and, again, came back, broke, was able to take that 2nd set 7-5. I think Stephens showed that she is in this to win this. She's in it to win it, folks, and she can win it. And she will win it, I believe. I very much am a supporter of Sloane Stephens. She's had a great year, to be honest. She's had some disappointing moments over the course of her career. She's been around for a long time, but she has a wonderful service motion, very effective serve. She wasn't landing enough of her firsts today, but very effective serve. And again, ground strokes, just power. Very powerful and almost effortless with Sloane. That's how I know she's going to go deep in this tournament. She's playing effortlessly. Well, she's looking at a round of 16 or a quarterfinal, possibly against Elina Svitolina, the number 7 seed. And then, of course, in the semifinal for Sloane Stephens, she could be looking at a match against Serena Williams. So that will be an interesting matchup for sure. And that's coming down the pike as far as I can tell. Absolutely. Let me take some comments here. We have LSB. You guys are talking about Raonic. Raonic has the potential to do some real damage here. But there again, Isner stands in Raonic's way. The Tower of Power, John Isner, stands in Raonic's way. And Raonic then could have to deal with Nadal in the semifinal. So I really don't see Raonic going beyond the semifinal if he gets there at all. I see Wawrinka possibly in that semifinal. We're just going to have to see what happens. We got a couple of other players coming through. We got some young guns. Coric is in there. Tsitsipas is in there. We're looking at a potential quarterfinal between Delpo and either Coric or Tsitsipas. The winner of that match could go on to face either Raonic or Isner, depending on who would win in the round of 16 between Raonic and Isner. Those are potential matches. We still don't know. But what happened to Grigor Dimitrov? What happened to Dimitrov? I was looking back at some of his numbers from Cincinnati. Of course, he was the defending champion at Cincinnati coming into this tournament this year. He won last year, was serving ferociously last year at Cincinnati. I believe he was able to hold something along the lines of 53 of 54 of his service games. He was broken only once during the course of the tournament. And then at the finals last, do you remember Grigor Dimitrov at the ATP finals? He is the ATP champion, the 2017 ATP champion. Do you remember him? Those serves, those forehands, the volleying, the movement, baby fed in all of its splendor. Where did that Dimitrov go? Dimitrov is capable of kicking butt, folks. He really is. He has shown the world. Now, I suppose you could argue on the other side that I don't think Federer was in Cincinnati last year. No, he wasn't. Djokovic, no, I think he was in Cincinnati. There wasn't as much competition as you have these days, now that everybody's back. Murray's kind of the only one that we'll have to see what Murray does. We can't quite call it another age of the big four yet until Murray shows us some results, shows us some money. But what happened to Grigor Dimitrov? Such a beautiful player, too. I mean, he's a gorgeous player. He brings that Federer-esque beauty to his style of play. He does. I love watching him. He's a good-looking guy. He seems like a nice guy, but he has just been so undependable. Now, I give Wawrinka full credit for this win. So don't misconstrue me here, folks. Wawrinka looked very good today. I gave him full credit. Notwithstanding the few minutes during which it's probably about 10 or 15 minutes, it's probably about 2 or 3 games during which it seemed like Dimitrov was turning the momentum of the match. And then it's Wawrinka, not Wawrinka. Wawrinka brought out the physio and was getting some treatment. And again, I was talking about before, it seemed like maybe Dimitrov was going to be able to exploit this and maybe come out of this match a winner. But the Stanimal would not let up. The Stanimal would not let up, and he was just relentless on the backhand side. And there was a lot of backhand. It was to a large degree a battle of the backhands today, and both of the players were hitting gorgeous one-handers. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Stan. Thank you for hanging in there. But what happened to Grigor Dimitrov? He knows how to devastate. He's a thunderous server. He's very precise from the baseline when he's playing well. Go back and look at the matches from the ATP Finals last year. Grigor Dimitrov, ATP Finals champion, 2017. Since 2017 Cincinnati champion, winning something along the lines of 53 of 54 service games during the course of that tournament. He cleaned up. What happened to him today? It's not the same Dimitrov. The Fed fans, complain about Federer not being the same. Would the real Roger Federer please stand up? Well, you could say the same thing about Grigor Dimitrov, couldn't you? I mean, I haven't seen if the real Grigor Dimitrov is the player who cleaned up, who swept David Goffin off the court in the ATP Finals. That was in one of the earlier rounds. There's bagels all over the place in that match. I haven't seen that Dimitrov in a while, but he's in there. He's in there. That's right, Cultura. Would the real Roger Federer please stand up? That's what I was thinking in Cincinnati. Would the real Federer stand up, please? Well, Anderson and Ryan Harrison are on serve in the fifth set. Anderson did take the fourth set, and Anderson is going to be taken to 5 by Ryan Harrison, one of the small hopes of the Americans. I was saying before about the age of American dominance in the 80s, and now that's all over. But at precisely the moment that was happening on the men's side, the Americans, in the body of Serena Williams and Venus Williams for a while, were beginning to dominate on the women's side. So something in terms of the composition of nationalities at the top in women's tennis, it's quite different. But there has been some very dominant American players. So there's no problem with respect to American players or America's ability to produce great tennis players on the women's side. But there is somewhat of a problem on the men's side. We're at the U.S. Open. I thought it was a legitimate thing to talk about. Who's the hope of the Americans? We've decided, I think those people that know tennis pretty well are pretty convinced that it, based on the record, has to be Isner. Isner's the great hope. John McEnroe agrees. Will Isner fulfill that hope? We'll just have to see. Del Potro about to get started against Donald Young. We've got Thiem up now 2 sets against Basic. Can check out some numbers from Dominique Thiem. Dominique Thiem is a player that I have been following very closely. He's a lost generation person, of course, folks, but he's got titles. He's got money in the bank. He has an ability and potential as well, and is a heck of a player on the red dirt. I just worry about him essentially, again, being a clay court specialist. So would love to see Thiem do a deep run at the U.S. Open. Now, the problem with that, and it looks like he'll come through this first round match with no real problems. Thiem has so far served 6 aces. He's winning 100% of his first serves. Now, that's the Dominique Thiem I know. He's landing 60. This has been through the whole match. He's landing 65% of his first serves, 24 of 37 so far, and has won 100% of his first serves. Can you believe it? That's like Federer. That's Federer-esque, right? On his second serve, he's got a 62% on his second serve, doing great at the net, winning 50% of the receiving points. He's hit 24 winners. That's one thing I noticed when I was looking at the Tsitsipas stats from earlier. Tsitsipas wasn't hitting many winners today. Suggests kind of a defensive approach from him. Team has been making, Team has actually been running a lot more than his opponent. Mirza Basic is the name of his opponent. He's a Bosnian, number 81 in the world, and he's been running around a lot. Team has had to work for his points, so he's a little more tired than Mirza Basic, but Team's looking great. So Team will go on, and his major problem, potential problem, is Nadal in the quarterfinals. And the way I have it mapped out is that he would have a problem possibly with Anderson in the round of 16. But you know what? We don't know about Anderson. We'll just have to see what happens with Anderson. They're in the final set, he and Ryan Harrison. Anderson's serving. They're on serve. Ryan Harrison held serve. Now Anderson's serving in the second game of the fifth set, and they're at deuce. So Harrison's pushing Anderson to deuce, the mighty Anderson to deuce. Things could change. The tide could change in this match very easily. Anderson does seem to have a little bit of momentum, having won the first set. Be interesting to see how Delpo does. Donald Young is no slouch, so that's a nice opening match for him. Now we're starting to get some scores. Delpo's beginning to serve. Serena Williams has taken the first set. We're in the first game of the second set against the first round opponent, Lynette from Poland. Qualifier, was it? Or no, not a qualifier. So Serena doing well. It will be interesting to see how Del Potro looks. Del Potro is another person that we have to keep a very close eye on. Because he has a nice, in a way, he's got sort of a clean path in to the semis, because we'll have to see whether Tsitsipas can get through. I don't think Delpo would have too much of a problem with Coric, but with Tsitsipas, I think Delpo can probably put one over on the youngster from Greece. We'll have to just see about that. I hope not, but it looks like Delpo has a very nice path into this semifinal, folks, where he'll face, in all likelihood, Nadal, possibly Dominic Thiem. We'll have to see, but according to my prediction, it'll be Nadal. Did anyone watch the Coric match? Coric came through pretty easily today, and he's another one. You know, if he feels good on these courts, if he's sort of striking the ball well, if he's finding his legs on these courts, he's another one that can be very dangerous. He won't be dangerous to Roger Federer, not in this tournament, because Roger Federer is down on the bottom. Well, tomorrow we have some fantastic matches in store. Patrick says, I watched the Coric match at 12 p.m. here in Sweden. It's now 3 a.m. Thanks for staying up, my friend. This is prime time. I wanted to do a little, well, it's not an experiment. I wanted to do prime time so that people can come on in and join the party, come home from work and whatnot, and relax a little bit, turn on the TV. Maybe you could turn me on in the background and kind of enjoy some U.S. Open tennis. But I did get some messages from folks that there were, some conflicts, particularly over in Europe. So we'll see how it goes. We could tweak the scheduling on the live streams as well. Another reason I wanted to do them later is because I want to have some matches completed that we can talk about. Team on serve in the third set, but again, team has taken the first two sets. Serena Williams now up a break in the second set, on course to win her first round match. Ryan Harrison and Kevin Anderson are also on serve in the first round. Wow, what a difficult match. 5 sets. Ryan Harrison is taking Kevin Anderson to. Anderson was able to take the set 7-6 in a tiebreak. It was close tiebreak, 7-4. Then Harrison turns around and takes the next 2 sets, 6-5, 6-4. Anderson squeezed out the fourth, 6-3, but now they are neck and neck in the team very substantially. But Dominique Thiem's big problem is Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals. Let me also say, I mentioned before that Kyle Edmund was upset by Paolo Lorenzi, the Italian 36-year-old. He's been on the tour for a long time. That makes things even easier for Nadal, presuming that Edmund could have been a threat to Nadal in the round of 16. That's what when they would have met. But now things get even easier for Nadal. The biggest threat coming into the round of 16 for Rafael Nadal is now Jack Sock. Well, Jack Sock is a big question mark. Jack Sock is a big question mark. Not as big of a question mark as Grigor Dimitrov. Grigor Dimitrov is more than a question mark. Grigor Dimitrov is a mystery. He's a fantastic player who has not made an appearance in a long time. And so I will repeat, will the real Grigor Dimitrov please stand up? The one that was in Cincinnati, the one that was in London. The real Grigor Dimitrov, would he stand up? That would be nice. Well, he's not going to get a chance to stand up in this tournament. Wawrinka has ensured that he's going to have to sit down. So Dimitrov's going to sit down for a while. We'll see what he can do in the fall hard court season. And he might be able to surprise us. I hope he finds form. I hope he comes back and cleans up at the finals again. But it's so inconsistent that it's just maddening. So we'll have to see how it sort of shakes out with respect to team. Possibly Anderson won't be a problem for him. It's possible that Ryan Harrison could get through Kevin Anderson today, and that would be a fairly big upset. It would be a pretty substantial upset. And that would mean that Dominique Thiem would have a much cleaner path into that quarterfinal. But again, if Rafa Nadal is on the other side of the court in that quarterfinal, it pretty much means that Thiem's run is over. Maybe I'm being cynical. We have a comment from Abigu Etem. Wawrinka is back, but his serve was awful. I saw the match. I wouldn't say his serve was awful. In fact, I have some notes about some very, very precisely placed down the middle aces that he hit that were very, very impressive. His serve, Wawrinka's a big server. Wawrinka has a serve. He's not a Djokovic-style player in that regard. There's a fairly substantial part of Stan's game that rests on that serve. And when his serve is is fine-tuned and functional, it's a weapon. So I think I disagree. You might have gotten a sample of that match where he wasn't serving very well, but I could probably go back to the serving numbers and we could have a real discussion. Stan was serving. Takes a while for these stats to come up. Excuse me. Stan, I think we actually went. No, we didn't go through these. He's getting 61% of his first serves in, but winning only 68% of his first serves. Dimitrov was actually winning more as a percentage of his first serves, but Dimitrov was only getting 52% of his first serves in. On most of the other relevant stats, Wawrinka was outplaying Dimitrov. Wawrinka won 12 of 14 net points. Very effective at the net today and moving around the court in masterful ways. The footwork is so important. I think Roger Federer sort of confirmed that when after Cincinnati, he kind of traced the whole problem back to his feet. He blamed his feet. All came back down to the feet. Wawrinka won 5 of 14 break points. He created 14 break points on Dimitrov's serve. Would the real Grigor Dimitrov please stand up? 14 break points on the Dimitrov serve. Wawrinka converts 5 of them. On the other hand, and this offers some support to the comment that was made before, Dimitrov was able to create about 8 break points, not about 8 break points on the Wawrinka serve, but could convert only 1 of them. That means Wawrinka at those important moments gave us the clutch tennis, saved 7 of 8 break points. Wawrinka wins 40% of his return points, hit 30 winners to Dimitrov's 29. They were about even there on that stat. Few less unforced errors on the part of Wawrinka. And Dimitrov was running around the court a lot more, or measurably more, than Wawrinka in terms of distance covered during the match. But 14 break points on the Dimitrov serve, well, that was kind of a roller coaster of a match in a way. But in general, the tone and tenor of it was that Wawrinka kind of dominated. But so we do have the Nadal match coming up. We do have the Del Potro match that is occurring. Del Potro is now up a break in the first set against Donald Young. Serena Williams is starting to mop up, for lack of a better term, mop up Magda Linette, who is the world number 60. Serena Williams won the first set 6-4 and is now on leading 4-0, up a couple of breaks against Linette. Del Potro looks strong. What does Anderson and Harrison looks like? Well, looks like Anderson will eventually pull through. He is now up a break against Ryan Harrison in the 5th set. I have the Serena Williams match on. Lord knows why. It's the one that's prime time, and this channel, the programming was giving me a hard time. It was hard to find some of these matches. The options are coming up on the iPad, but they're not so clear on the TV. So in any case, this is an important match. It's going to be over pretty soon. We're going to have Nadal today. Like I said, he will go on to face Pospisil. So let's, in conclusion, talk a little bit about the matches that we're going to watch tomorrow. Dominic Thiem, incidentally, has a double break point against Misra Basic. Looks to be in a position to convert it. Let's see. Can he do it? We'll have to see. I'm going to come back and check that. Tomorrow's matches. Oh, we have some good ones in store. Of course, Roger Federer will be out. He'll be playing Yoshito Nishioka. And according to the way they fix these draws, as I was talking about yesterday, they tweak them a little bit so that the top 2 seeds don't have hard opponents in the first round. That's what the research has shown. So Federer looks okay in the first round, but as early as the second round, he's got to deal with Benoit Paire. Robert, thank you very much, my friend. Thank you for your participation. Thanks for the comments. And thank you all for the comments. It's just been so good to have these interactions. Thank you. But Federer will have Benoit Paire, and that could be a difficult match, could be a challenging match. It'll be that's coming up this week. And then, of course, the match that we've been talking about and many of us are waiting for on the edge of our seats, the match against Nick Kyrgios. Federer versus Kyrgios. Kyrgios knows how to apply pressure to Roger Federer. He does not do it exclusively through his return game. He doesn't beat Federer the way Djokovic beats Federer, which is essentially by applying pressure to Federer's serve. No, Nick Kyrgios brings an affirmative service game of his own, but he's also able sometimes to get his nose out in front with respect to Federer's serve. So that will be an interesting match. We've got Marco Cecchinato, who'll be coming out and playing Julian Benneteau. Tomorrow we'll have the Cilic match against Kopil. Should be interesting. We will have Carreño Busta, who fell recently to Steve Johnson in the semifinal at Winston-Salem. We'll have to see what Busta is up to here at the U.S. Open. We'll have to see if he can get through Jaziri, who is really no slouch and can pull a few surprises from time to time. Diego Schwartzman will be playing Federico Del Bonis. And Novak Djokovic has his work cut out for him in the person of Marton Fucsovics, who is quite a player, a tough customer, to use a phrase that I've used a couple of times today, a tough customer. Novak Djokovic is the 6th seed. Del Potro, incidentally, looks to be very much dominating Donald Young, who is not yet on the board in his match against Del Potro. Dominic Thiem now up a break against Misra Basic. Let's do this, Domi. I'm so glad to see that you're winning this first round match decisively. So much depends on building the confidence throughout the tournament, I think. It's really important to do. Last year at the U.S. Open, for example, remember, Federer had a difficult time in those opening rounds, and you could just tell it was going to be a tough tournament. I mean, in a way, the red flags were there in the very early rounds for Federer last year. And then, of course, he fell to Del Potro in the quarterfinal. But Dominic Thiem appears to be finding a very nice winning rhythm, has dealt out a breadstick today against his opponent, Misra Basic. Kevin Anderson, for those of you tuning in, looks to be finishing up a 5-set job against Ryan Harrison. Credit to Ryan Harrison. Wow. Putting up quite a fight against the number 5 seed Kevin Anderson, who is quite capable. A very tricky customer to deal with. Del Potro now 5-0. It looks like bagels are in the oven between Del Potro and Young. And what does this say about Del Potro? Is it Del Potro's time? Well, if you asked Donald Young right now, he might say, yes. It looks to be Del Potro's time. Donald Young wants at least one game in this first set. It looks like it'll either be a bagel or a breadstick. There's nothing else. Serena Williams has won, and there was a bagel there too. So, listen, folks, with Halep out, that makes Serena's quarter a lot better. She has bageled her opponent. Her opponent, Magda Linette from Poland, who is the world number 60. She has bageled at 6-4, 6-0. Serena Williams is through. And will go on to face. Let's see, who will she go on to face? Well, I think those matches are actually getting played. In any case, Serena's looking to be in very good form. But Thiem here does have his break, is not so decisive in the third set. We'll have to look at those numbers. Anderson looking to bring it through. So to finish off, I just want to say a few things about tomorrow's matches. We'll be coming on tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll be doing the prime time tennis talk. And we're going to have some great ones. Of course, we'll be able to talk about the Nadal match after I get off tonight. I'm going to watch the Nadal match. Looking forward to that against David Ferrer. It should be a lot of fun. And it could be quite competitive. I think one of you has told me that Ferrer, this might be his last season, so this is kind of a last hurrah. So it'll be a good match. But of course, for tomorrow, there's the Federer match, and we will probably not be able to cover it. It'll be the same kind of deal as we're doing tonight, where we won't get to cover Nadal. But I've had a great time tonight. Oh, what's in the coffee mug? I actually have a little coffee in the coffee mug to kind of perk me up a little bit after dinner. I was getting tired. It was a really long day. I had to do a lot of other things today, but this U.S. Open is already so entertaining. Just watching Wawrinka today was fantastic. And for those of you just tuning in, I'm sort of a fan of Sloane Stephens, and Sloane Stephens, her form looks really good. But here comes Serena. So, wow, wouldn't that be interesting? Well, let me just check. Will Sloane Stephens meet Serena Williams? Sloane will meet Serena, and I talked about this before, and that could be in a potential semifinal. So that would be an all-American semifinal, and could be very, very interesting. And that could tee up a final, say, between either, well, as many of you say, Wozniacki, but really is Wozniacka, something to that effect. Caroline Wozniacka, the 2018 Australian Open champion, very well may face Sloane Stephens in the final, but it could be Serena Williams as well. So much more to talk about this week, folks. It's going to be hot in New York, extremely hot. And that can be challenging for these players. Federer's not getting any younger. We've got many 30-somethings out there. And Andy Murray already seemed to be struggling from the heat today. We'll have to just see what happens. It's going to be in the high 90s. I mean, it's devastating. It's probably not record heat. U.S. Open's always quite hot, isn't it? Del Potro wins the first set with a bagel. Del Potro wins his first set in the 2018 U.S. Open with a bagel. Team looks to be closing in on a victory over Misra Basic. And Anderson struggling we'll have to see what happens with Anderson and Ryan Harrison, who are in the fifth set. But there is so much more to come. Tomorrow, I'll probably open up by talking about Nadal and the Nadal match, a bit about these final matches that we didn't get to see. I want to study the numbers from Team. I also want to study Team's form. I want to watch that match. Tomorrow, the highlights will be Federer, obviously, although we're not going to be able to cover that tomorrow in the live stream. Probably not, depending on how things work out, depending on how long we go. But we're also going to have Alexander Zverev against Polanski. And as I said before, Djokovic versus Marton Fucsovics. Djokovic has got his work cut out for him. That's not going to be an easy match. But lots more commentary coming. I am going to close this out for this evening. It's been wonderful to share the experience with you this weekend. How's everybody doing? Hey, Aaron, could you please return stream an hour earlier for the guys of Europe, because it's very late now here. First match of the night session will be Federer. Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. Let me consider that. I'll consider doing it a bit earlier for the European folks. I tried to calibrate with this with the demographic. There are a lot of Americans, but they aren't necessarily very active at this time. I wanted to go on at prime time, at least to try it, to see whether we could enlarge the party. And it's been good tonight. I don't think it's been a measurably, a substantially larger party than we've had before. So let me try that. We might be able to try earlier. That's a legitimate request. And LSB, 2:30 a.m. here. Thank you for showing up. I've loved having you and seeing you, and thank you, as always, for your very thoughtful comments. Thanks, Matthew. Great to see you. Your question about the roof, Robert, let me try to find that. Hold on. Night matches under a roof. Well, is there something that they'll do? Because affects Federer's chances this year. So, closing the roof, is that the question, Robert? Closing the roof to take the kind of bite off that heat? Yeah, I think it's probably only fair. I mean, but then of course you do open up that can of worms, don't you? There's the possible controversy, but particularly if they just do it for, they just do it for some players, or they just do it at night or whatever. At night, it'll probably cool off. The sun does need to go down before it cools off. Thank you very much, RMA. Yeah, they just did it for Serena. That's right. So, that's probably what will happen if that's what they're doing. But they do subject themselves to claims of, basically some discrimination in favor of the matches that are getting played on certain courts at Arthur Ashe, basically. So we'll see how that goes. It's a bit controversial, but it's a great question. We'll think about it some more. Let's look at how they conduct that, but it is a good way to deal with the heat problem. We are going to see a major heat wave coming in, and that is so hard on these players. So hard on the players. Clear skies in New York right now. Well, that's great. That's great. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful here in Boston as well. And it's not so hot, but I think it's going to get sort of increasingly hotter over the course of the week. We don't want Roger Federer fainting. Not that he would ever faint. They're used to this stuff. They've played in hotter, I'm sure, and it's always hot at the U.S. Open. It's part of the experience. But the roof could be something of a way to take the bite off that heat a little bit. But well, listen, folks, I think we've covered all of the major points about today. It's been great talking with you. I will sign off for now, but looking forward very much to continuing the live streaming tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of great matches on tomorrow, and of course we do have Federer, but tomorrow once again we'll be doing more of kind of a preview for Federer. So listen, best wishes to everyone. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and have a great evening. Thanks so much. Bye.